Welcome to this week's edition of your Jim Ned Sports Nation Coaches Show. We're sitting here with your head coach, Jonathon McClure, brought to you by Halligan Services. First of all, Coach, congratulations on win Friday night against Clyde, a big rivalry game, and the Indians did a good job of showing up from the first quarter on.
Yeah, it was a great night, man. When you script it up, that's kind of how you want them to go. All three phases of the game were executing well. Kids played their hearts out. It was a great night to be an Indian.
Absolutely. You've stressed a lot in this show and to your team after the games and during the practice and all is, to start from the opening kickoff and be there both mentally and physically ready to play. How do you think your team responded to that in the first quarter, getting off to a fast start?
Yeah, I mean they were locked in. It's kind of weird. This year's group's a little bit different from some that we've had in the past year. You get out there with them in pregame, and sometimes it's hard to tell where they're at. Are they up? Are they down? Are they just focused? But man, there was no question in any coach's mind. We kind of went in and did our little pregame meeting and said, man, they're in a good spot. And so we had a really good feeling coming out, for the start of the game, and they were right where we thought they were. Come out, you call the turnover. That's a huge thing. Early on, quick momentum shift, and then go down and actually score that ball. If you cause that turnover, you don't go score, then you lose a little bit of that. But man, getting on the positive side of both those things, man, starting fast, kids were locked in, and it just kind of steamrolled from there.
Absolutely. You talked last week about the fact you were impressed with Clyde's size up front, that their offensive line, defensive line, they had a lot of big kids, a lot of strong kids up front, but didn't seem to matter. It looked like the Jim Ned Indians controlled the line of scrimmage Friday night from start to finish.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I mean, we're not small. We're not, big, hefty guys, but we got some height and we got some length. My biggest worry going into that was just kind of watching some of their games and how they had played out. If we got an officiating crew that let them, get away with a little bit more holding or whatever, every crew is different with what they see on some of those judgment calls. And so that was kind of my conversation with the officiating crew before the game was, kind of getting to feel how they were going to be. So I had a feeling that if we got a call early, it would slow some of that down. And if they had to try to block us outright and not being able to grab and pull and sling us around, they were going to have a hard time. And, our speed up front really, really gave them fits. And like I said, length, we move around well laterally and things like that. And so, we were able to minimize their size, didn't let them just run it right down our throat.
Absolutely. Utilized offensively a lot of motion and a lot of really used the fly sweep action, the sweep actions to get outside of them. Was that one of your premier parts of your game plan going in?
Really, that's a big part of our offense every week. It's just how different teams seem to adjust to it, and with the way they were playing their outside linebackers, they weren't really coming and forcing that. They were kind of hanging back. I think you know part of that was obviously due to our ability to run the ball downhill. So we try to influence people like that and get them to widen out so we can run downhill. And when they didn't adjust to that kind of thing, well, it was pretty simple. You just hand the ball off and take the edge, and we were able to do that over and over again. And then once they really did start flowing, then you kind of saw some of those, QB pulls get back across the grain, vertical run game start really hitting. So yeah, I mean that's always part of our offense, and the system that Coach Huff brought with him. He loves that motion and doing that and moving players and seeing how the defense is going to adjust.
Absolutely. Defensively, I know the game plan going in was all eyes on number 4. We've got to stop the quarterback run from right. And for the most part, till the fourth quarter, the Indians did just that.
Yes, those two guys in the backfield, number 4, number 20, both coming in had really really hurt people in the running game, especially direct snap. I'm not saying he can't throw the ball, not what I'm getting at, but number 4, he's a little bit of a cheat code. He's a running back playing QB from that
Right.
standpoint, and then they got a big physical runner in 20, and I think we were able to kind of be a little bit more physical than them early, and that kind of played into the way that they went about things. Now, with all that being said, we still had a hard time getting 4 on the ground. We just were able to get lots of guys to him, but man, very rarely did the first guy get him down. He just has a great, center of gravity, great balance, and so kudos to him. But man, we did. Kids got after it. They flew around. When one missed a tackle, we always had 2 or 3 more, coming around to try to clean things up.
Absolutely. And so let's transition a little bit. Week 10, it's the week we've all been waiting for. We
Yeah.
thought if things played out the way it did, it would come down to us at Sweetwater this Friday. And sure enough, it does. First off, what type of atmosphere do you expect Friday night over in the Mustang Bowl?
Man, the way I've described it to the kids, it's going to be a playoff atmosphere. It's not a win or go home game, but it's just there's high stakes. A lot of history in the bowl, things like that. They're going to be torqued up, ready to go. It's a district championship for them as well, and so I expect it to be electric. I really do.
The only difference being that not only do we need to win, but we have a set number of points. Does that factor in maybe to the play calling at all in the first 3.5 quarters, or is this something that's only really going to be on your mind maybe down at the end of the ball game?
It's hard to approach, from that standpoint any differently than you would any other time. I try to stay consistent, take the points anytime we get them. And what I mean by that is, unless it's a, situation where converting a fourth down or something like that is really highly likely, then we'll go send the kickoff, the field goal unit out there. We got a lot of confidence in that group. And so we'll go take our 3 points, and just every chance we get, we're going to put points on the board. So that kind of stuff early on, we're going to just play the ball the way we do, and hopefully we take care of take care of things defensively, put a couple scores on them, and then the 8 points is a non-issue. Late in the game, when you start looking at that and you get in a tighter game, then it does have to come into play a little bit. But ultimately, the best thing for us is to go win the ball game. And so if we get it by the 8 points, great. If we end up not doing that, it still sets us up better with a better seed as far as the playoff bracket goes and things like that. So, I kind of set the kids down this morning and talked to them about all that. I don't want them looking ahead. I don't want them trying to figure out all those different scenarios, because there's tons of them in our district and our by district.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so I gave them the information that they needed and said, guys, the biggest thing is let's just go take care of business and do what we know how to do. And that's just go do our best to win that ball game. And, whatever amount of points it is, we'll try to control that from a coach's standpoint. I don't want them pressing. I don't want them thinking too much about it. I just want them to go play fast.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that we're clear, we really have 3 scenarios that we're working for. If we win by 8 or more Friday night, we would be the number 1 seed. Then if we win but by less than 8, then we would be the number 2 seed. If Sweetwater wins, then we're probably looking at number 3 seed. Is that correct?
If we're
depending on
that
what
all of
happens with
those scenarios
Comanche.
are assuming that Comanche beats Clyde, and that's
Uh-huh.
the other half of that. If Clyde were to go out, I say go out. It's in Clyde. If Comanche comes into Clyde and is not able to secure that win there, then that kind of changes some of those a little bit, and so that's why we can't put too much stock into that. Hopefully, like I said, we'd love to just go out and get a double-digit win and not worry about it. But
Absolutely.
yes, if
Yeah.
we're going to assume that that Comanche beats a Clyde football team, then yes, those 3 scenarios are the way that works out.
Yeah, but it's good to know that you're not, any way we go, we're not facing a week 1 opponent that we don't think that we can win. Like you talked about, any, first seed, second seed, it's all going to kind of be a wash there for us as far as a playoff run. We just need to concentrate on this week, just getting better, I guess.
Yeah, I mean that's always the case. We only get so many opportunities to get out on the field, and every one, whether it be a practice or a game, is a chance to get better as a team. And so trying to approach it that way, obviously, you start looking, and it's really hard not to look ahead, because we do know some things about some of the potential opponents, and who's going to win this matchup, or who, if you do this, we're going to get this team second round, stuff like that. But really, you got to treat it one game at a time, because it's Texas high school football playoffs, man. Anybody can win.
One and done, right?
One and
You lose
done. Yeah,
one and you're done.
you don't get to have a slip up at that
Yeah.
point. So
Yeah.
you're looking at that by district. I've had a lot of questions from different people about who we're going to play. Well, there's 5 potential opponents still that we could play out of that by district. Theirs is just as messed up as ours is. And so, there's too many ways to try to look at it and try to plan. So,
Right.
just go handle your business the best you can and get the best seed you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So what should we expect from this Sweetwater offense Friday night?
Man, athletes everywhere. So, they're, if they've got all their guys healthy, and that's a little, little to question there up front with their O-line, but man, 4 out of their 5 guys are pretty large. A couple of them are real big. They have a very talented offensive lineman, defensive lineman that they don't play all the time offensively. He's primarily a defensive player, but they'll come in, bring in a tackle over set, bring in a heavy set, short yardage, goal line type of stuff. So they're going to put some size up front once again, just kind of like what we saw out of Clyde. They may be a little bit more athletic than the Clyde crew that we saw a week ago. And then when you look at all the skill position players, man, they're 1 and 2 deep everywhere. They got speed. They got a couple guys that can really take the top off of a defense. And they got 2 or 3 physical runners, depending on which ones they have available to them. I've seen 4 different guys run the football that are all pretty talented. Their feature back is coming off an injury a couple weeks ago, but he kind of had his full game coming back last week against Breckenridge. He played offense and defense and things like that. So, we're looking at a team that we don't know exactly who's going to suit out, who's healthy and things like that because, they had a couple guys out. They may be back. We just got to prepare for all of them, and we'll see who's there. But, man, they're going to have athletes everywhere, and they're going to be big.
Absolutely. Defensively, talk to us a little about their scheme and what they try to do, and then how we'll try to attack that.
So they're pretty multiple. You'll see them what we call an even front and an odd front. So they'll go 4 down linemen and go with 3 backers. They keep a 4 shell on the backside of that all the time. So what I mean by that is 2 safeties, 2 corners. But when they go 4 down linemen, they'll drop an outside linebacker, kind of 4-2-5-ish. And then you look at them when they go their odd front, which they've been playing a little bit more here lately. I think they were probably about 60% against Clyde. Clyde runs a lot of very similar formations to what we do. So 60% odd against Clyde. And when they do that, they're going to have their 2 outside linebackers. They're going to look a lot like us from an alignment standpoint. But the difference being, how they play things on the back end. We try to fast fit our backers into the run game and things. They don't. They kind of float, and they really expect their D-line to make a lot of plays and cause running backs to bubble, cause them to have to, change their course of direction, and then they just kind of clean it up from the backer standpoint. And then on the back end, they just try to keep everything in front of them for the most part. So they kind of build what we call an umbrella, on the back end as far as running like a cover 4 type scheme. Just kind of drop back. They're not super aggressive on the edges. Just try to have everything off in front of them and then wait until the field starts to condense. Right. When the field starts to condense, everything gets tighter, gets harder to score. So they're pretty safe. A lot of people have moved the ball on them. Well, I won't say a lot, but there's been some teams that have had some success moving the ball on them, between the 30s, and then things kind of tighten down, and they do a pretty good job once they get in the red zone.
So what you're saying is offensively, we need to be very proficient in the red zone.
Absolutely, and kind of goes back to what I said earlier. When we get chances to, put points on the board, whenever those happen, we need to take them. But, looking early in the year, teams had a little harder time running the ball on them. As of late, they've had a couple teams that have had some success running some schemes like what we do. They give up, some timing type routes. They don't give up a lot of the deep balls and things like we've gotten against some of these other guys. But, they're going to have some holes the way they drop into coverage and things. If we can just kind of slip a guy in there and hit a quick hitch, steal 5 or 6 yards at a time, that's as good as a run,
Absolutely.
When you look at it from those standpoints. But yes, when we get them down in there, we need to definitely just keep the chains moving. If that takes 4 downs, great. Once we get inside field goal range, take the points and just kind of keep rolling.
So this strength of this defensive line, is this an attacking defensive line, or is this more of they want to play kind of technique with you, then cross hats and go find the football?
A little bit of both, really. When it's kind of interesting when you try to watch them, and I can't really pinpoint. Is it just they're a little tired right now? I mean, they'll have one play where, man, they're shooting up the field, and I'm thinking of one guy in particular. He's hard to stop from doing it, and man, they fly in the backfield and try to, like I said, make something happen. And then they got a couple bigger guys that aren't as fast that play up there, and they kind of do what you say. And they just kind of sit on the line of scrimmage and kind of try to show their hat on one side and swap sides with the O lineman and make a play at the line of scrimmage. But like I said, the linebackers just kind of floating back there, not fast fitters. So they're just waiting for those guys to make the running back declare, and then they kind of fall in and make the play. So, not tons of tackles for loss unless they're bringing guys off the edge, and they will do that. They'll bring an outside linebacker and blitz them off the edge. If they're in their 4-2-5 look, they're not afraid to bring that weak side safety as an outside linebacker and come blitz them off the edge. That's how they create and generate their tackles for loss for the most part. And then when their defensive line is fresh, their defensive ends are athletic, they're long. Those guys are a little bit more aggressive than the interior tackles.
Finally, let's talk a little bit about injury report and so forth heading into Week 10. It's been a long season. We played a tough schedule, tough pre-district and then district schedule. How healthy are we heading into Week 10, and what are some areas of concern for you there?
We did have one injury last week early in the game, and so we're dealing with that. We don't know his availability yet, but one of our offensive and defensive linemen had a little bit of an ankle sprain and things like that. So we're rehabbing him, trying to get him back ready to go. For the most part, we've got some bumps and bruises and things like that, but the kids, you can kind of see the progression throughout the week. We bring them up every Saturday, and we're going to run them and lift them after the game, and some of them move pretty slow after that. But once we get that run in and get their blood, flowing a little bit and get a lift in, then by Monday they're a little bit more ready. And then those that are, maybe had a little bit of injury, maybe they're a little slow Monday, and so you just kind of see them start building throughout the week. But we've only had the one guy with the sprain that hasn't practiced. Everybody else has been available to us in practice and going. So we just got to kind of continue to, everybody's playing hurt at this point in the year. There's nobody that gets to go play and feel super healthy and feel super good about it, but we feel like we put a shell on them in the off season. We feel like this is the time of year that we were working for. Is late in the season when you are starting to get bumps and bruises, you get a lot of soft tissue injuries, and we've been able to minimize those for the most part. And so, like I said, they may not feel great, they may not feel like 100%, but we feel like they're all available, other than maybe the one ankle.
Awesome. Talk to us a little bit about it, and we've noticed in the past weeks as well. But the efficiency that play that you're getting out of your quarterback position, kind of the maturing of Gray Beasley, and his stat lines, especially during district, way more touchdowns than interceptions, making some really good reads. Showed a lot of patience, I thought, last week on a couple of plays, checking down to other receivers. So that's a process. And where do you believe that Gray is now at that quarterback position here in week 10 versus when he stepped into the role, starting off the season?
He's in a good spot. Sometimes it's hard to remember when you look back a season ago and he was the starter. He was having an outstanding start to the year. Well, it was a whole different dynamic for him. Excuse me, coming off of an injury the way he had. He had to kind of, how you say, kind of get his wings back a little bit as he's going and get his legs back. And so, I think there were times. Edit that one.
Edit.
Yes.
Let's wait 3 seconds.
He had to get his legs back underneath him, was a big part. And then, early on, I think there were some times where, he really wanted to make a play and maybe forced a ball or two. Nothing that was completely just out of the ordinary for any high school quarterback. But, just kind of getting back out there and being a little antsy early on. We felt like he settled down from that part early on. We played some tough defenses that took some of those things away from us. And so, we leaned heavy on our running game. The one thing that I felt like, kind of even reaching back, we saw flashes of it in Wall, and then a little bit later in the holiday game and things like that, Jacksboro game, and then coming through district is his ability to use his legs once again, and so that opens up so many more things to him. But he has done a great job decision making. We've had some opportunities to take some deep shots. He's thrown good balls there. They haven't always been caught, but for the most part, if they're hitting our hands, we're in a good spot with those. And then, like you said, last week we saw a chance for him to take some of those shots, but had a more open receiver down and just taking the easy yardage, extending the play, getting lateral, not cross line of scrimmage and hitting guys running, kind of scramble drill type of things like that. So really like where he's at right now. He looks like he's having a ball out there. He's having lots of fun. The O-line's keeping him clean, for the most part. He doesn't get a lot of quick pressure in his face like that. So he can really get a chance to kind of get a read on the defense early, and then, the play starts, and then see if that's something going to change post snap, and then take the shots. And the offensive coaches, our offensive staff have done a great job as far as setting him up for success in some of those, and flooding zones and doing those things and giving him the reads that he needs in order to make plays in the passing game.
Absolutely. Well, finally, and I know that we don't like to look ahead or talk about anything, but the difference this year is into years past, since Jim Ned has been making playoff runs, is it seems like Region 1, Class 3A this year, more than any other year in the past 5 years or so, uh, it's wide open in terms there's not that one dominant team out there that everybody's trying to avoid or trying to figure out when do we play them or when would we run into them. Do you really believe that that's the case? And then, what does that do for a staff and for a team thinking that, hey, let's just get in the playoffs and see what happens, because there's just not a dominant team sitting out there that everybody thinks is going to win the region?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. We had this discussion way back before we even knew how some of these teams are going to, kind of play out in the season is you're just kind of looking at the people that teams have lost, not knowing what they're coming up from JV with and things like that. But you look at it, and that's exactly what you see is you see a bunch of teams that you're like, okay, they're good. They're good. There's no doubt. There's some really good football teams out there, but I don't know if they're completely next level where you're like, man, just dreading wherever that matchup is. And so you start to look at, schematic matchups from that standpoint. And, I feel like, when we start talking about seeding, things like that, that's really what we're talking about is when we're going to see that worst matchup for us and what round and things like that, if we can keep winning. But like I said, you can't look ahead. We've kind of showed that, we can be beat, we've been beat and things like that. And then we've beat some really good football teams on the other end of things. So, but yeah, it's as wide open as it's been, excuse me. And we feel like we're right in the mix with all that kind of stuff. If we can stay healthy and like, we referred to earlier, I know it sounds a little cliche, but if we can just continue to get a little bit better each day, then, maybe we can find ourselves in one of those spots. And then, okay, you match up with maybe the one top three in the region. And I've got three teams in my mind. I won't go through those necessarily, but really I'm just looking at teams that have won multiple rounds in the last couple of years. It's not the same kids necessarily, but those kids, I don't know if people understand the value of coming up as a sophomore, even if you're not getting to play, but you're getting to be 4 rounds into the playoffs and you've been there, you've seen that.
Well, it's 4 more weeks of practice too.
Absolutely.
It's
And,
a whole second season.
we're looking at it from the standpoint of like, our kids haven't got a chance to do that. Our seniors, I guess 3 years ago, coming off after the state run or 4 years ago, whatever that is, we got to the third round. And so we lost the third round. The year after that, we lost the second round. Last year was in the first round. So we haven't got those extra weeks of practice. We haven't got those late round playoff games that you're feeling kind of that pressure of and just being around a little bit more. So that's when I look at what really separates a couple of the teams at the top is that, they've had those experiences in the last 2 years. And so, we've got to prepare our kids from the standpoint, and that was kind of went into play in some of those type of teams early in the playoffs. You look at some of the teams that we did play, not playoffs, I'm sorry, pre-district. You look at some of those teams that were on our schedule, and those teams that were in our pre-district, they did play 3, 4 rounds, 5 rounds in the playoffs and things like that. And so when you look at that, we beat some of those teams. It's not the same, I guess, atmosphere all the time. But that's what you really start looking at with the region is just like, okay, so these guys, they've been 3, 4 rounds the last couple of years, had a lot of experience. They've been there. And that's the one thing I feel like that kind of separates, probably the top 2 or 3 teams and then kind of everybody else right now. And so I feel like from a talent level, we can go play with any of those guys. If we're healthy and we take care of business, you put us on the field with them, we'll take our chances.
Absolutely. And that's a good feeling to have. Not only that, but controlling our own destiny as we do Friday night. So, Coach, just congratulations so far on a great season, and good luck Friday night. And let's go get that number 1 seed, and then hopefully we'll be doing this for 4 or 5 more weeks.
Absolutely.
All right. That'll conclude your Jim Ned Sports Nation Coaches Show featuring your head coach Jonathon McClure, brought to you by Halligan Services.